So the question of the day, indeed the question of the decade, is where is the U.S. Nationalist Party? Nationalism is rising all across Europe. What we're seeing in England is an absolute rejection of the global imperialism of the EU and of the British elite political class. When you look at what happened in the British Council elections, the way that both the Conservative Party and Labour got absolutely destroyed simply because people were so angry at Theresa May and the Tory leadership, but also were not willing to exhibit support for Labour. That's why they voted for the Lib Dems and the Greens and everybody else that they could, because they simply weren't willing to vote for either of the two major parties, and they couldn't vote for Brexit yet, for the Brexit Party yet, because they weren't running anyone. And so, part of the problem is the U.S. two-party system. But that's actually, the structural problem is actually secondary, because individuals, the politicians, have the ability to drive the direction of the party. And unfortunately, for all of his many accomplishments, for all of the fact that Donald Trump has been one of the greatest presidents in American history, he still hasn't addressed the fundamental issue of nationalism. And it's really kind of ironic, because Trump's election helped inspire all of these nationalist movements across Europe, from Spain and Vox to Britain and the Brexit Party. But it's kind of crazy because, I would have liked to have seen President Trump work more closely with Nils Farage. He was initially very friendly and stuff, but clearly seemed to think that he had moved beyond that. But that's not at all true. It's not about who is in power. It's not about who happens to be in a important position. It's about what the person actually does. And frankly, it does appear that President Trump cares more about Israeli nationalism than he does about American nationalism. Now, I don't believe that's necessarily true. Appearances can be deceiving, but it does look like that. Pike says the Western world is thirsty for leaders like Trump. Well, I think a more accurate statement would be to say that the Western world is thirsty for leaders like Trump appeared to be in the campaign. But, when you look at the way that the nationalists are making significant progress everywhere from, Sweden and Finland to Hungary to Switzerland and Italy, now Spain. And I know I've described the problem. The part of the problem is that the U.S. doesn't know who it is. Americans don't know who they are. Americans were successfully denationalized by the various immigrants who wanted to redefine America in order to make themselves feel part of it. And so when you look at the situation, it's it's a difficult one. It's a distinctly problematic one, but that doesn't mean that it's not the right thing to pursue. Polish Warrior says Spain is socialist now. So what? Who cares? It's not about ideology. If you allow yourself to be governed by foreign imperialists, the ideology doesn't matter. You don't have any control over what is dictated to you. And so, I mean, the core problem. We know what the core problem is. On the, well, Real Ghostface says various immigrants with echoes, but it's not just the Jews. The Jews were part of it, but so were the Irish, so were the Italians. They all eagerly embraced that theme and helped push that theme of civic nationalism, of denying that America was a Christian English country. And now we're seeing what that price is. I can't pronounce his name, but he says, I would vote for an outright communist nationalist at this point. That's right. Because what did we learn from communism ruling over Eastern Europe for 50 years? We learned that the countries, the nations, still remained who they were. They might have been socialist Poland, they might have been socialist Romania, but they remained Romania and Poland. The same is not true of the Western world. They've all been invaded. They've all been adulterated. They've all been intrinsically weakened. And so, yes, yes, the Irish are definitely partly to blame for it. You know, who do you think sponsored the 1965 act? It was a third generation immigrant, Ted Kennedy. You know, was he just a tool to a certain extent? Yes, but they all buy into that whole idea that, they don't want to admit that they're not Americans. They don't want to admit to the truth. And so what they did was they redefined American in the same way that Ben Shapiro is now trying to redefine Western civilization.